everybody. How is everybody doing, huh? We'll start by washing the dishes. Wash the clothes for the night. And then we can show you some 3D printer stuff that got done. And we might start off one of the prints on high speed. Higher speed at least, because I want that one to come out a little faster. And of course I can print ones in the future at a lower speed, but the ones that I just printed recently, they were printed at a relatively low speed, so they should be fine. I'm taking the clean dishes out and putting them away. Not all of them are going to fit, but there's some of them in there, isn't it? I don't know where that goes. It's not my house, by the way. It's not my house. Oh, why did I turn that off? It needs to heat up. Not 100% sure on where the pots go. Is it going to warm up or not? Warm enough, maybe? No, I want it hot. I want it to be hot, baby. For as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead also. James 2:26, King James Version. What is your name? That I might tell the Bnei Yisrael who sent me to them. Achia Asher. Achia. I am who I am. Tell these Royalites that I am has sent you to them. Enarche en halogas, kai halogas en prostontion, kai theos en halogas. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and God was the Word. Barashit bara Elohim et hashemayim ve'et haaretz. והארץ הייתה תוהו ובוהו וחושך על פני תהום ורוח אלוהים מרחפת על פני המים. In the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth. In the end, these three remain. Faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. Before Abraham was, I am. And they picked up stones to stone him. I am the first and the last, the beginning and the end, the one who is, the one who was, the one who is to come, the Almighty. English only? Oh, English or Spanish? Porque no es posible hablar en ambos. Plus, like, YouTube has like a translator that like automatically will translate some things with the AI. I don't know if it works for live streams, but es una opción para usar, you know what I mean? And yeah, I wasn't speaking in I was speaking in English, Koine Greek, and Hebrew before, but we can do Spanish too, why not? Me gusta este idioma también. For sure, man. We can throw a little bit of Punjabi in there for good measure as well. Ikon kar satanam karaparak nilbo ninaver karmarata juni saib hangur parsajap adi sach jugadi sach hey be such nanaka hosi be such. And we, we could even put some, do some Sanskrit in there. Om Borbuva Suvaha Tatsabator Varainyam Bargo Devasya Dimahi Dio Yona Prochodayat. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. And we could even, and I know I have like Islamic viewers. We could throw in a little bit of Arabic in there. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin El-Rahman El-Rahim Maliki Yawmiddin Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim Sirata alladhina an'amta alayhim Ghayril maghdubi alayhim wala dhalin. Amin. I don't know if I should have said Amin at the end of that. Although I don't know if that's necessarily anything bad in that surah. There's also, let's see. What else could we? Oh, we could do, well, I don't know a whole lot. I don't know a whole lot of Latin, but we could quote Horace, the ancient famous poet, when he said, what was it he said again? Ira furor brevis est. Anger is a brief madness. Well, actually, I don't know if he said that. He was a poet, so, I mean, and we know about him, hundreds and hundreds of years later, so I think it's much more likely that he wrote it. Whether or not he said it, I don't know. Languages. Oh, we could even go into Shetlandic, man. We could do some Shetlandic. We gung to the kirk and gie we're arms. We say we're pyres and we sing we're psalms. And when a host is blinded and mourns a death, we visit the falcon we send the wreath. And slip the bairns a penny or twa, then blight when we're out on the wa fayata. We could have done something to show we were caring. When we heard it alas, it was hay in the barn. And we might have studied that crayter a bit, a drinking so silly, just trying to forget. And say for the want of a hand clasp, he was left to redout his own record hesp. We sit at the heartstain and criticise, this ain't Christ and the next ain't wise, and mask him truth with a bit of fun. So God be blessed, it were no like yon, and row and o'er the bed content at another day was nobly spent. Did we send three? Oh, I'm missing something. Something, something, something. The rivers had ran with blood, and the pocket was suffering for earthquake and flood. Did we send 30 shillings to ice their state, to help to get medicine, shelter and met? Or shack our heads and say, dear, dear, Lord be praised that it's no lack on here. But what... I remember some of it in English. I think in like English it was like, and when we think of the rivers that ran with blood, and then the other part I think was like, but what a better place this would be. Trying to think of it all in English is kind of throwing me off a little. Or sorry, all in Shetlandic is kind of throwing me off. Oh fudge! I have had that memorized for so long, but I don't know why that one part slipped in my mind. I'm in a very interesting headspace recently with applying for jobs and the new 3D printer and some interesting things happening at work at my current job, which has been an interim job. I'll have to look up Bowl My Sheep again and see what the missing line is, and then maybe memorize some more of it. Beautiful poem. The poem basically is about living faith by action, not just being a fake Christian. Or at least that's a big part of it. A lot of it's about being... A big part of it is being a better human being. But it is definitely focused on Christianity. I mean, Bold My Sheep, sheep being a major theme in the Tanakh and in the Brit HaChadashah, the New Testament. And, the shepherd, the good shepherd, which would be Yeshua HaMashiach. Jesus the Christ, and the idea being, one of the themes seems to be, shepherding the sheep in, as a shepherd, the good shepherd, the idea that we are the sheep, some of us are lost, and then the shepherd finds us and calls us. And by the way, you can look, there's a video online that shows this, where a sheep, you can say the exact same thing to call a sheep over, but they don't come to you when you make that, when you say that to them. They come to the shepherd. And shepherds do lose their sheep, and they do find them, and it's very emotional. At least historically, it was often very emotional for the shepherd to find a lost sheep. That was the sheep were and for many shepherds today a huge thing. I mean, they grow an emotional connection with the sheep. The sheep benefit the shepherd financially. Likely is big part of his livelihood. It's likely he's breeding them for future generations and for future years in his own life. And there's a good chance also that the fleece and the meat can be used to benefit the shepherd. But obviously, in this sense, I don't think that's exact. Well, I don't know that we would necessarily compare Yeshua in that way. Although I would say that it does seem, from my understanding, that Adonai does seem to want companionship. So in that respect, I guess we could say that we do have a mutually beneficial relationship with our God, which is an interesting... It's an interesting way to look at it. Not that he needs it. Not that he needs that dynamic to be fulfilled in that way. Obviously, he's not want for anything. But I think the idea is that he wants it. Which is a very interesting thing to consider about and meditate upon. And we can speculate a lot into it. A lot of people have a lot of questions about that. I mean, I do get into apologetics. I mean, I do have a little bit of experience in apologetics, but I don't know that I would have all the answers. I think a good worker in apologetics, I think, should admit when they just don't know. I don't think there should be this dishonesty to try to win converts or to prove oneself right or someone else wrong. I don't think that's the right way to go about it. Not to say that nobody ever does. I mean, the Brit HaChadashah seems to allude to the idea that there are fake Christians. I mean, we can imagine so many people who even go to church every week who will end up in the everlasting fire. And the people who end up in everlasting paradise might be people you really might not expect. Not to say that they're going to be the people that are like going around and selling drugs to 5-year-olds or anything like that. I'm not saying those are the people that are probably going to make it in if they don't repent. But the kind of people that make it in, there might be quite a few homeless people. I would actually be kind of shocked if there weren't. A lot of people who the world frowns upon, I think there's a good chance a lot of those people will make it in as well. But a lot of people do fake faith. They see that there's benefits, or maybe there's an appeal or something, but there's a difference between fake and genuine faith. And there are a lot of fakers. Not to say that so-and-so or so-and-so or so-and-so is one of them, but it's like when you bring that kind of thing up and people get upset about it, it's like, well, why are you getting upset? Like, are you one of them? It's like, I am a Messianic Jew. I am a Christian Jew. Jewish by my birth and ethnicity, and my lineage back to Israel, the man, obviously, not the country. But when you say, that some people are faking their faith, and people get mad about it or upset or they act funky about it, to me, that's like a major red flag. It's like, well, why are you acting odd now? Like, are you one of the fakers? Like, are you afraid I want to expose you? And it's like, well, dude, I mean, like, I wasn't planning to, but you're kind of making it obvious. Oh, hold on, I got some comments. What's up from Vegas? Yeah, what's up, my friend? Got my kippa right here. I'm about to wash clothes, and my phone's about to die, so I'm about to charge it up so the stream lasts a little bit longer. Come on, baby, charge. I just bought a new charger, and the old one was the same brand. It worked really well. This one does not work as well, so give it a sec. Actually, I think it's the cord I use, but it's the one it comes with, and I noticed with the other one when it was breaking, some cords, or one cord seemed to work better than the other, so I wanted to go with the manufacturer thing, but... Okay, can you all still see me? Can you all still hear me? Yeah, you should be able to. Got some clothes here. Clothes I wore today. Don't think I've been wearing these. Like, I didn't even come to the gym or anything, but even if I did, they don't get that dirty. You wear them for a day. The socks are probably, well, the socks aren't even that dirty. They just get sweat and dead skin and stuff, but... And I'm going to have to go get some more detergent. We have some left, but I'm going to throw in a little bit of this dish soap for good measure, because that will get... Some people might be snobby and be like, well, why are you doing that? Well, it's like, it kills a lot of the germs. It's actually very good for getting certain stains out. And yeah, I mean, there's like why wouldn't you use something that was another strong? I mean, it essentially is a detergent. It's just a detergent for dishes. As far as I know, I think by definition it is a detergent, though. And it functions in much the same way. I don't want to obviously put a little bit of detergent in there. I was like dumping the detergent before, but at the gym and all. And the gym, and there's like mothballs over the house. I'm going to have the vacuum tomorrow. And, the combination of those things and maybe some other things you might say. I really wanted to give them a really deep clean, but the shirt should be fine. The socks are probably the thing I'm going to want to clean up the most. I think the sweatiest part of your body. I want to get all the sweat. I want to get the sweat out, obviously. The sweat and the dead skin. Kill those bacteria, because the bacteria is, to my knowledge, the bacteria is what's making a significant portion of the smell. When it comes to like smells in your body you don't want, or some people do. Some people do. I like that in a romantic relationship, but I would say that when you're around the average person who is not in a romantic relationship with you, most people obviously aren't going to want that. And so, in a generalized way, when I say we don't want that, that's kind of what I mean, like in most circumstances. And a lot of those odors come from bacteria in your body. So that's why people who from different that's one of the reasons why people from different ethnicities, like people are like, oh,
those people from that culture, they smell. It's not that they smell, like they just have a different microbiome. So the bacteria in their body are producing different smells. Now, to be fair, some people in some cultures might have different bathing practices. That's true too, but like Philippines, they'll be bathing like 3 times a day. Now, I bathe twice a day. 3 times seems excessive. Like if I had the time, maybe, but it's like no, I don't think I have the time for three baths or 3 showers a day. That's a bit excessive for me. But yeah, a lot of people in the Philippines will bathe like 3 or 4 times a day. And some cultures they'll bathe once a day or once every other day or few days, and like American culture, I think it's pretty typical, just like once a day. But I do twice. I do get tired of like people talking about like Africans and Indians, and people who talk about Indians. People that talk about Indians, I think, come from a variety of cultures, but like the only people I think I've ever heard talk bad about how like in recent times how Africans smell are Black Americans, and I don't know why, but like it's just messed up. And I wanted to point that out. It's important to note that because it's not like it's a race thing so much as it's clearly a cultural prejudice, but it's still wrong. I think to alienate an entire group of people for something that I don't think is a really big deal. They eat different foods. I mean, you see them come in the grocery store. People from other countries will eat different foods, and you'll see all these like exotic vegetables. To us, exotic vegetables. They'll have tons of vegetables that Americans aren't buying. That stuff. They're buying the processed stuff. They're eating very healthy. They're eating very healthy. But I want to point out though that like just because it's another form of prejudice, it's not specifically. I do want to point out that just because it's not specifically racism, it's still another form of prejudice, in this case cultural prejudice, and it's kind of messed up. I don't know. And maybe I'm being a hypocrite, I don't know. I don't necessarily think you can't critique a culture, but like in that sense, it just seems kind of petty. Sorry, now I feel bad. I probably shouldn't have said all that, but it just, I don't know. It seems kind of, I don't know. I don't know. It bothers me that some people do that. Like that's their conversation starter. So let's clear the palate and talk about something that actually is meaningful or has some substance to it. For example, I do want to talk about. They're two of my favorite poets. Actually, I had a friend. Now, this is before I sobered up, and he would give me, or him or his partner would give me some sort of alcoholic beverage, whether it was sake or a gin and tonic. There were a lot of gin and tonics, and yeah, then we would like. His partner would like maybe play the piano, and he would like he liked poetry. So at one point he was reading from this book that I think was from the 18 or early 1900s, and I loved it. I wish I still had contact with him because it was a little playful poem, and it wasn't necessarily something that was highly intellectual or anything. It was for fun. It was intelligent, but it wasn't necessarily genius, as you might come to expect from certain poets. But it was intelligence, but it was witty. It was fun. It was fun. It was fun. The kind of like old humor that you would see a lot, where it would have an air of intelligence to it. That's one thing you see a lot of, because I think it was aimed at a younger audience, or I think a more general audience. But you see that a lot today, where you see a lot of the the stuff that's aimed at a more general audience is also kind of like overly simplified, I think, to an extent to kind of reach more people. And I don't, I understand the marketing strategy behind that, but I don't necessarily, I think we've lost something substantial in the attempt to acquire more financial gain. And while I understand the reasoning behind it, I don't necessarily agree with it. One of my favorite poets would have to be, well, one of my favorite poets is Khalil Gibran. And then my other would be William Blake. Now, Khalil Gibran was a Lebanese immigrant to America, to the United States. Very famous poet. You can find him in just like pretty much any Barnes and Nobles. Probably has multiple books of his. I don't think I've ever been to a Barnes and Nobles that didn't have at least one of his books. Or actually, we only have one Barnes and Nobles nearby. I think it's only been that one. But I don't think there's ever been a time in that Barnes and Nobles that at least one of his works was not there. And I believe that's where I got his collected works. Of course, not all of his works. And of course, as a Lebanese American, not all of his works were in English. You have translations. But his famous book, The Prophet, is a famous for a lot of a favorite for a lot of people, and it basically delves into a wide variety of human experiences, and kind of gives a sense of fulfillment to those experiences that are very universal, that are universal, and it's very relatable to the average person. It doesn't utilize language that's overly complex, but it does touch upon the human emotions of the average individual, and even the unaverage individual. It really is something that speaks to just about everybody, and it does utilize common language, but it does so in somewhat of a way that is somewhat reminiscent of more ancient texts. But it also it's seemingly timeless in a sense, and I'd say one of his other works that I really enjoy is called The Madman. That work I like. I don't necessarily agree with everything that he's with all the points that he's trying to drive home with his poetry. I don't necessarily agree with every position that he has. I would say a lot of his stuff is heretical. Omar Khayyam is another poet I like, who I also don't agree with on everything that he says. In fact, I think he was actually killed by the Islamic authorities of his time. And Omar Khayyam, I believe he was killed by the Islamic authorities of his time. I think they saw him as a heretic as well. I think a lot of people call him a Sufi. Again, I don't necessarily agree with everything that he's writing, but I don't also pretend to know everything that he was intending to convey, especially since I rely on the English translation. And that's largely because my knowledge of Arabic is very limited. I think he wrote in Arabic. It might have been I think Omar Khayyam might have been in Persia, so it might have been in Persian. It would have been in the Arabic alphabet either way. But William Blake, now he was a British poet, and William Blake, yeah, he was a British poet. Now he was, in a sense, very similar to Khalil Gibran, in the sense that he would have images in his poetry. In fact, a lot of his poetry was fully printed by himself. He was a printmaker. And if you've never been in an art studio in like Micah or Towson or any other college or university that has like an art degree program, if you've never been to one of those, you might not know what a printmaker looks like. It's basically, you have these machines that press the ink into the paper from pre-designed plates. You carve into it or you add to it to intentionally design it so that it makes an impression once you apply the ink. And that's what he did. Now, Claude Lebrun's art in his works, they were, I believe they were they were drawings. He drew a lot. I don't know how they exactly incorporated them. I don't know if that was done during his lifetime or afterwards. I don't know if they had scanning technology when he was alive. I've been looking to his when exactly his birth and death dates were. I wonder if he did. I wonder if he was scratching these drawings into plates or not, or if someone else was. I'm not 100% sure on that, but they both had a sense of visual art and a sense of poetic art, William Blake and Khalil Gibran, which might account somewhat for their popularity, although they were both very prolific writers in the poetic genre. For example, William Blake, one of his favorite pieces is from the Pickering manuscript, and it goes as follows: to see a world in a grain of sand, or heaven in a wild flower, to hold infinity in the palm of your hand, or eternity in an hour. It's really fun to have these kinds of concepts painted into our minds. It's fascinating to have these kind of concepts painted into our minds. From oh fudge, I'm getting tired. It's amazing to have these kind of concepts painted into our minds in such a way by those expert craftsmen of the human languages. And one thing interesting about William Blake that you might not know is that in the Ecclesia Gnostica Catholica, he is considered a Gnostic saint in their particular Gnostic Catholic religion. And I believe he's also considered a saint in Thelema. A lot of people consider Thelema and the Ecclesia Gnostica Catholica, the Gnostic Catholic Church, to be satanic, and I would not necessarily disagree. It's not blatant. It's not as blatant as some of the other stuff, and a lot of members will say that they're not. I don't know. I think it is, but I also understand why people would say it's not. I get where they're coming from. That doesn't mean that William Blake was necessarily satanic or anything like that. But he was very. He did have a spiritual touch to him, which is maybe why certain people in the occult might find an attraction to him. But from what I've read of his works, I don't necessarily see something that's overtly occult. I mean, the man wrote a poem about a tiger because he went to a zoo and saw a tiger, which was very rare at his during his time period, the 1800s, in Great Britain. That wasn't a common thing to see, a tiger. He wrote a poem about it, but at the end of the day, he wrote a poem about a tiger. I don't necessarily. He did have some things that were pretty profound, that might have had demonic elements to them in terms of his paintings and stuff, or we might say, some people might argue angelic or godly. A lot of people come from different directions, but I don't necessarily think that he was somebody that was some superpower of evil, even if we think of him in a more negative terms. I mean, again, I don't necessarily think he wasn't just in many respects an average guy. Profound poetry, profound art, And we could argue whether or not there's anything that might be demonic about it. For sure, we can argue that day and night. And we might have good points on both sides. But at the end of the day, you know, I don't know that we should necessarily read too much into him, because at the end of the day, he was just a guy, and he was a poet, and he was an artist, fine artist as well, right? Like I don't want to delve too deep into like just because some Satanists thought he was cool doesn't automatically mean that he was also a Satanist. That's what I'm trying to say, you know. Because, by the way, the Gnostic Catholic Church, it seems like the founder, Aleister Crowley, seems to have also considered the possibility of including Jesus Christ as one of their saints. Because he even brings up why he didn't, seeming to indicate that he put some thought into the possibility of doing just that. Why would he say he didn't do it for this reason if he wasn't considering it, right? So, that seems to be a possibility. So, just because they chose William Blake as one of their saints doesn't necessarily mean that William Blake was also. You have to be careful with fallacies regarding guilt by association, right? Because he didn't know Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley came, I think, like 100 years after him. So it's like he didn't know the guy. He didn't sign up for that, you know. He didn't. He didn't know the man. I don't even think he would have liked him. You know? So I do want to caution against, you know, logical fallacies when it comes to something as, you know, something like that. You know, these were very different men, very different circles. Both were poets. Aleister Crowley was a poet. I mean, Aleister Crowley wrote in Liber al Veligis, he wrote, to see the world, oh no, that was, above the gem at Azor is the naked splendor of Nuit. She bends in ecstasy to kiss the secret ardors of Hadit. The winged globe, the starry blue, are mine, O Ankaf na Kansu. So yeah, and yeah, he sometimes rhymed. It would seem, you know, Aleister Crowley would sometimes rhyme. A lot of poets don't rhyme when they, like, you read Khalil Gibran or William Blake, or now Omar Khayyam, I don't know if in his original language if it rhymed or not, and like Jalaluddin Rumi, I don't know if in his original language if it rhymed or not, but same thing with Hafez, and you know, now I'm getting to the territory of, you know, Sufi poets, but I don't necessarily, you know, a lot of poets don't rhyme, and of course in the English translations, a lot of these don't rhyme. The Ruby to Omar Khayyam, I know at least one English translation does intentionally make it rhyme, which leads me to question, you know, the validity of the translation in terms of literal translation. I don't think it was very literal if they went through extreme efforts to ensure that the verses rhymed. I think there was a lot of artistic liberty done in that translation. I have it somewhere. It's a relatively old translation. I think the book's like 50 to 100 years old. What the fudge? Everybody's saying English. You don't get to decide that in my live streams. You don't get to decide whether I speak in English or not. And if I'm quoting, like, I can even do Elizabethan English. I can do Old English. I didn't even do Old English earlier. I could do Old English now. What way Gordana in Gordagum Theod Koninga Thrum Gefrunen Huda Thalinga Selin Frebeden Offshuld Sheffing Shethina Threata Maneg Thumb. Oh, bye.